welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing a video on my autism, part maybe 2, maybe 3, I don't know. Of course haven't scripted this, so if it's very rambly and all over the place, that's why. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, the way I see this video going is, for me personally, it's basically a video on like my experience as an autistic person, and like if I was to, I'm recording this as like how I feel about autism and that at the moment, as a 25-year-old, and also, so it's a bit like a time capsule for me in that sense. Also, it's sort of like I don't want to use the word memoir, but more something like if I could reach out to someone who either didn't know anything about autism or Asperger's or anything about how to support someone with it, but needed to know how to support someone with it, whether it be me or someone else in my family or anyone else who's autistic or whatever, you know, or what I wish people knew how to help us with, if that like what could help us, me or other people with autism, generally speaking, and that then people like learning support staff at school, if for whatever reason watched this, then hopefully they would take something away from it, you know, and just be like, okay, this person with this orange Splatoon hat said this thing, and maybe this would help my 13, 14-year-old student who's struggling with English or making a friend or whatever, or maintaining eye contact and that, you know, in school. And it's not also to just suggest things or just to say, these are all the things I struggle with, or these are all the shit things about autism. It's a mixture, I guess, this video, or I want to talk about pros and cons. I guess that being one of them, potentially, depending on who you ask. I see things quite logically, or quite, I guess, clinically, logically, scientifically, I think, kind of. I'm not very emotional driven, which I guess is why most people mistake autistic people, generally speaking, for people who don't have emotions. When I do, I just find it, in the last 5 years, really struggled. I mean, I think I've struggled all my life, but I'm more, I've been able to reflect more, to be like, yeah, okay, I fucked up in trying to articulate how I feel. Granted, I'll be honest, even at 25, I don't feel like a lot of people reach out to me, which is quite sad, really, to say out loud. I know talking about mental health, there's a lot less stigma about it now, so that's definitely a plus, but also, like, in the last sort of 3 years, maybe 4, 3 more so, but maybe 4 at a push, the term neurodivergent has kind of come in to the ether or the discussion or whatever, all of a sudden, from my perspective, as an autistic person who, well, let's just say during my schooling days, wasn't called neurodivergent, and that there was quite a few different words used by the other students, for better or worse. And I don't know, it's an odd one, because I think the reason why it irks me, I don't mind medical professionals using that term, but like it irks me because it's like, I think it is a medical term, and also like people in the public, general public, shouldn't be using it in that sense then. But also it's a catch-all term for anything from autism to ADHD to OCD, or maybe even just regular, well, not regular, but more common, a thing like anxiety and depression, or just depression, or a little bit of an anxiety disorder, or whatever, you know. And so when people are like, oh, I'm neurodivergent, that doesn't narrow it down for me, you know, like, again, logically, you're just saying, I'm something, you know, and we're all something, you know, but what are you specifically? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have a diagnosis, then I guess that's difficult to say, but also, by the same token, if you don't have a diagnosis, maybe you can either self-diagnose or maybe just wait for a diagnosis or try and work out that process or whatever, but also don't just... The neurodivergent thing, it just personally for me, on a personal level, it irks me. I don't know why, but I think a strength of mine is that I try to be patient with people and I try to meet people halfway. I know based off what I just said, kind of sounds like I'm not a very reasonable person, but I think I might be. I could be wrong. I don't have a lot of high confidence or self-esteem. I definitely have self-esteem issues, and that's definitely something I need to work on. But I think a misconception is that autistic people can't be funny. Quite a few people have said that I'm quite funny over the years. I hate it though when I'm funny, but I didn't mean to be funny. I'm trying to be serious. That I don't particularly care for, and that used to really get on my nerves. I'm trying to work on that and that, but it is still very difficult. But when I'm trying to purposefully be funny and then I get a laugh, that is a very amazing feeling. And that, I think my relationship with my autism, it can vary from good to bad, to the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's never. I don't think it's ever been set in stone how I feel about autism as a thing. For me personally, I think, for lack of a better term, it is in flux. I think a positive is that I'm very sort of driven by what I like, I guess. You know, I'm passionate about what I like, basically, is what I'm trying to say. You know, like with Doctor Who, and that's why I built this, but I said built this, made this Doctor Who YouTube channel, because I have so much just useless knowledge, in inverted commas, or opinions at least, about the show, and that, and so obviously back in like 2008, I think it was, near the end of the 10 era, I made a YouTube channel so that I'd have somewhere to expel all this nonsense, because obviously there's only so many Doctor Who related conversations my mum or a friend can deal with, and that. What else? I'm a very visual learner, I'd say. I like visual things, like TV a lot, and film, and comics, I guess. Visual things have always appealed to me. Video games are cool. I'm not very good at them, but I try my best, I guess. I'm very visual orientated. I enjoy this fidget spinner. Lessens my anxiety. Fidgets are great for me, to just ground me a bit. Again, Doctor Who's been like a constant, so like I'm good at like doing something or finding a hobby, but then doing it for a long time. I've noticed. I don't know why, but maybe that's an autism thing, I think. But then don't assume that all autistic people are like that. Some might have more surface level specialist interests, / maybe a specialist interest and deep dive into just like loving everything to do with like frogs or Doctor Who or Blake 7 or Star Wars or whatever, but then the next month completely discard it and then go to the next specifically sci-fi thing, or just completely different thing, like I used to like history when I was younger, but then that kind of went to the wayside and I stopped liking it. And I have a passing interest in history, but it's not like a hyperfixation. Well, I wouldn't say hyperfixation, but it's not my autistic specialist interest. But I do like it. I do find it oddly comforting for some weird reason. I guess it's because it already has happened, so it is just facts, collecting facts, and that, fun or otherwise, I guess. What else? And then I guess obviously when I was even younger than liking history, I would have liked stuff like, you know, Thomas the Tank Engine, and maybe had a little bit of a for lack of a better term, dabble with liking trains. I know that's a stereotype that all autistic people like trains, but I find them comforting to be on, and I find them more comforting and enjoyable to be a passenger on, generally speaking, than a bus. And less frequent stops for sure. But I'm not like a train spotter, but I know some autistic people are. But then some people who are autistic really like sports and are really active and going to the gym or this, that and the other, and the routine of that, and keeping fit and healthy and doing that sort of stuff. That's another thing. I do really like routine, which I guess is challenging because I don't like change, which is kind of ironic considering that the last time I'll have done one of these videos I would have been in a different house. We almost moved here in September this year. It will be in September 2023. It'll be 2 years since we moved to this place, so big change there. I'm not massive on little changes, even though I can just, I don't know if I've dealt with, in inverted commas, the change from one house to another completely well, or as well as I could have done, but the point being that I struggle with change, but I also just sort of British, stubborn upper lip, sort of have to get on with it like everyone else, I guess, but don't know if that's emotionally healthy. But again, going back to my earlier point, I really don't understand emotions very well. My own or other people's, because of not understanding my own, how could I then understand other people's? Which again goes back to the whole thing of like, not only do people then think I don't have feelings, but then it also means that people think that I don't care about other people, which is far from the truth. If anything, I sometimes care too much about other people, and it hurts, me on an emotional level, where it might not other people. And that, so I have sensory issues, of course, predominantly to sound. I don't like very loud areas of places. I have ear defenders for that reason, fairly discreet ones, which is good for me, he says, whilst wearing a bright orange Splatoon hat on camera. But yeah, I enjoy, I have sensory issues to that, but then some other people who are autistic find the constant barrage of noise comforting, because then that blocks out their thoughts, whereas I prefer having so little noise, or a little bit of noise, but not so much that it's like I can't even hear myself think, but what I mean is, like, even if I was in a room with 3 people, let's say, and I was a 4th person, and they were all talking, and there was a little bit of background noise, then I think that would be a bit overwhelming, where most people, generally speaking, of the neurotypical NTs, neurotypical non-autistic people, would not struggle with that environment, I don't think, Giving eye contact, I have learned to the main obvious strategy, cheat code, whatever you want to call it, way to circumnavigate eye contact is to kind of end of the nose, chin, cheeks, anywhere generally around the face that isn't the eyes, forehead, or a hat, I guess, in my case. People usually, generally speaking, are okay with that level of eye contact, even though it's not eye contact, it's the illusion of eye contact, It's fascinating that most people get tricked by that they think that you are looking at their eyes, or maybe they're just being really polite and not being an arsehole and yelling at you to give them eye contact, even though I've lost count how many times people have yelled at me to give them eye contact. So some people are really not that polite and discreet about their desire and demand for eye contact for whatever reason. Because that's another thing, I just don't really understand why it's needed, because, again, logically I hear with my ears and see with my eyes, and so I don't think I'm being disrespectful when I don't give eye contact personally, but yeah, seems a bit of an odd one. What else? I think, again, I like moving about sometimes, but not a lot. I don't know, it's weird. I don't know how to describe my movements really. I guess I move quite sort of awkwardly, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe even more purposefully, like I have to really think about it, how I move, but yeah. Very visual person, yeah. Like I like things in images, I guess, that always helps. Um, like comedy a lot, like it just makes sense to me to make people laugh or to that releases endorphins. Like for me, like doing a 20-minute walk somewhere or a half an hour walk, and I don't have to be really sweaty when I laugh. Last time I checked, so that's definitely a plus. Yeah, I don't know really. Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope with like stuff like alcohol and that, because it does definitely lower my anxiety, but by the same token, it's a slippery slope, Because I guess the problem with social interactions is that I get in my own head a lot of the time about them. I also just sort of, I guess I don't have them so frequently day to day that I've it's like I build up a way to build up a rapport with someone, but then it's like a week or two since the next time I see them, so then that progress is lost constantly. That I'm in that sort of cycle, I guess, which is not great. But yeah, I mean, I'd say compared to where I was last year, I'm definitely in a different place, maybe even a slightly better place. I don't know if I don't know if I'd say I'm in an amazing place compared to where I was last year, because I was really not in a good place last year. But not to bore you with the personal details, but I think that I'm just in a different place, and I guess I like taking things at a slow pace. I know that really pisses my mum off for whatever reason. I like being methodical, I think that's the right word. Thorough. Like, in my mind, I guess, it's weird, autistic sort of stereotype again, but in media, like the autistic detective. Yet the irony is that in my own personal, for lack of a better term, headcanon, is that I like to think of myself as like a crime scene detective in my own life sometimes, I guess, like taking things, as I say, bit by bit, like an investigator of a crime scene wouldn't just rush into that situation and presume how the person was killed. They'd have to go by it procedure by procedure, sort of logically and methodically, or bit by bit, I guess another thing that can rub people the wrong way is that I compartmentalise things. I don't really cross things over quite a lot, But again, I think that is just maybe an autism thing. I don't know. Some autistic people really like music. I'm not a fan of music. I mean, I listen to it sometimes, but I'm not super into it. It's weird. It's like I do my Doctor Who Big Finish audio reviews, but I don't. Beyond them, I have a few musical albums on CD, a few, and literally just a few, like Rick and Morty soundtrack, Baby Metal, Daft Punk, Weird Al, and maybe I might buy the Gorillaz an album from them one day, maybe. But yeah, very weird, eclectic, random assortment of music, which mainly comes from someone else in my own family, usually, because again, I'm just not very audio in tuned. I don't know if that even made sense. But again, that's another thing I struggle with, tone of voice, travelling places independently, buses for sensory reasons, and the unpredictability of the other passengers, or the change in routine depending on if there's roadworks and this, that and the other, and the weather and so on and so forth. So yeah, I guess be patient with autistic people. That would be very helpful. Ask them what they might need help with, or their parents or their carers. Respect them as well. Sounds like very basic things. Try and communicate with them, with the autistic person. Treat them, if they're 25, like an adult, regardless of whether or not their interests are socially appropriate for someone their age, and by that I don't mean that they'd be socially inappropriate, but that they'd be childish, like liking Spider-Man still, because there's no Spider-Punk t-shirt, or liking Splatoon, or Trains, or, you know, liking a animated kids show. Maybe they're nearly 30, or they are 30 and they still like SpongeBob SquarePants because it just makes them happy. Who cares? Like, you know, like, don't mock them for that, you know. Even though you might, obviously, as someone who works with said autistic person, whether they're a teenager or an adult in this case, might not like that thing, just respect them, you know, just as much as that then you would hope they would then be able to respect you for liking, I don't know, Casually or the news. I mean, I don't think anyone really likes the news, but you know, like whatever most people who would be older who would work with autistic people might like, you know, like a hobby like gardening or something, or painting, or going bowling or cycling or whatever, you know, like they're more sort of active, social, outdoorsy things, and some autistic people are outdoorsy, some people aren't who are autistic, but also we need time to decompress, and I hate saying that because it makes me sound like a washing up machine with a face, that's what I always picture when I say the word decompress, of a washing machine with a face on it. But I think the thing that, patience, ask us what could help us, respect our boundaries, definitely. I think that's another thing, like people just assume that because people are autistic and that we have no boundaries, which again goes back to not having feelings, I think. But then it's like people only take on board that we have feelings when we get to a point where it's like that threshold has been pushed, we've been pushed to a limit where we have a meltdown or shut down, or we just sort of start screaming and shouting, you know, which isn't great, because then it's like, well, you did that, not us. We're reacting to your rubbish and your constant nagging or pushing us, you know. Be patient, write things down with little pictures, maybe, stick pictures or just images if you can find them on Google, and stuff. That can always help. And I think that's about it, really. I can't be bothered talking anymore to the camera, so I'm going to wrap up now. Thanks for watching. Please do comment, rate and subscribe to the channel.